And now another episode of Locker Room TV.
We got a very special guest this morning, Alex Dayrabekov. Did I say that?
Hello. Good morning.
How are you? I usually screw up any kind of name that isn't Saxon related. Listen, my friend, I want to get people. I want people to know who you are. You're in the Ukraine, and you are just outside of Kyiv, right?
Yeah.
What's the name of the town that you're in?
It's Cherkasy, 200 kilometers south of Kyiv.
Okay. And when the occupation started, you had a regular day job. You went to work 9 to 5, had a suit and tie on, and then your whole life gets turned upside down. And not only that, previous to the occupation, you introduced a new one, a little one, to the world. So 2 weeks before, you had a what's your baby boy's name?
Arthur, like Arthur. The king.
There you go, King Arthur. Awesome.
Yes.
So you and your wife introduce a new child and then all of a sudden Russia starts dropping bombs on Ukraine. I can't even imagine. Yeah, unbelievable. And you guys put together, you organized something. Tell us a little bit about that, Alex.
Well, we actually evacuated the first days of the war from really a war zone, because my wife saw standing with a 2 weeks old baby. She saw military airplanes flying her way. She called me and she was really scared. So we evacuated. But, you know, I couldn't just sit at home and read news and contemplate on the news and on what is going to happen. So I decided I should go to Kyiv and help someone. I first thought about helping the army, but then it turned out that the subway, the underground or subway, that's how it's called, I believe, they need a lot of help. So I organized a volunteer team that helped the subways.
So you're delivering supplies and essentials to the people that are using the subways as bomb shelters.
Yes, yeah, the subways are the best natural bomb shelters, as the Kyiv mayor said. And one of my friends actually stayed overnight in this bomb shelter, and he experienced this himself. So he called me and said, well, they basically don't have anything. There's no tea, there's no sugar, there's no teapots to boil water in.
So you actually started making sure that they had that kind of stuff. This is an ongoing effort for you right now, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. We started off, like, actually the first week of the war. We started with one subway station, and then we actually covered all of them in several weeks. And we continued supporting them until, I think, 2 weeks ago. Then we understood that they are covered, and then we redirected our efforts to other fields that need help.
Where are the supplies coming from? Like, where do you have to go? And
well, the first 2 weeks, of course, the humanitarian aid could not have been delivered by that point. So we just basically went to supermarkets and bought stuff. You know, I invested my money. Then I started calling for people who would send us money. Well, in Ukraine, the people are quite poor, especially in this situation. But then I started asking my European friends, or actually they were calling me or messaging me and saying, how can we help? I said, okay, that's how you can help. Send us money. And then my Canadian friends, American friends started sending money. So we used this money. We did it very fast and efficient way. Just went to the supermarkets, bought a lot of stuff, and delivered it to the subways.
Are you in a situation now where the stores, I mean, I'm guessing there's some supply chain issues with the situation you're dealing with the battle against Russia. Are you concerned about being able to keep up the supply chain here, or do you guys have plans to get to the borders, Poland and Hungary and Moldova and things like that?
Well, actually, to tell you the truth, that the supply chain situation is even better than the first weeks. So yeah, the supermarkets are full with products and all, because the logistics works perfectly. You know, we are talking about the eastern regions that are in a war. Everything else is completely controlled by the Ukrainian army. So supermarkets are fine. But you know, after first 2 weeks, the humanitarian aid starting coming. And now there's a lot of humanitarian aid, which is good. So we don't need to spend money on buying stuff at the supermarkets. What we spend money on is we are sponsoring the trucks, the volunteers with trucks who deliver stuff, humanitarian aid from the West to Kyiv, because it's typically like $150, $200 per one trip, which is good money, but we get a lot of humanitarian aid. The second is that we sponsor the restaurants that prepare or make meals for those who are in need. And again, we can either bring some humanitarian aid, or we go to the supermarkets and buy specifically what they need. Again, with $300, $400, sponsor one restaurant, and we now cover 4 or 5 different restaurants. So with about $2,000 per week, we cover quite several restaurants that prepare food for thousands of people. That's how we help them. And third direction is that we specifically sponsor those families with children. And for example, I just messaged with a woman who has 5 kids, and they in a very critical situation. So some $40, $50 could help her live through the next 2 weeks, you know.
Well, we're working on something on our end as well, Alex. I think Dean from the Dean Blundell store may have, our podcast may have actually mentioned it to you, and we're doing the same thing on our merch page here for the Locker Room. We've got a Slava Ukraine shirt for sale, and we have a donation button beside that as well. And people are buying the shirts and they are donating money. And by the end of April, we're hoping to be able to send you a nice chunk of change that you can use in your efforts in Ukraine. What we like about this is that we're getting money directly to somebody that is actually there, you know, on the ground.
And what you're doing is so important too, how you've chosen social media to show what's really going on there. It's pretty crazy that we can be aware of what's happening because you're there posting and showing.
If what Grant's referring to is Alex's Twitter account, which is his last name, Dayrabekov. And if you follow him on Twitter, you're posting almost every other day videos, right, Alex, about what you're seeing and going through?
Yeah, actually, this is a story in itself. Within the first 2 weeks, I tried to communicate with my relatives and people I know in Russia, just sending them videos and stories from what I see, not some random news or whatever. My first message to them on day 1 was that, look, we are a very peaceful, Ukraine is a very peaceful and very hospitable country. We are always welcoming anyone who comes to us. But if someone wants to step on our land with evil thoughts, we will fight. That was what I wrote to them. And I didn't hear any single thought from them. They were completely silent. That's when I thought, why would I spend my energy, my nerves on the people who are completely brainwashed by the Russian propaganda? I would turn to the West. That's where our real brothers and sisters are. That's where our friends are. Lachlan has become one of my best friends, although we never met in person, but people like you are real friends. And that's how I decided to post some short stories, videos on Twitter and Facebook.
And we've been retweeting them and sharing them to get the message out, to continue to let people know Ukraine and you and the people are going through. It's insane that, I mean, we come into work every day. I mean, I was all upset because it took a long time for my coffee at the drive-through today.
Yeah.
Not thinking about the fact that we're going to be hooking up with somebody, my friend Alex, who's in the middle of a war in Ukraine right now with a brand new family and has to, just struggle for day-to-day stuff and worry about his phone alarm going off about an air raid, right? How often does that happen? How often? We were on an interview with you on the Dean Blundell podcast, and in the middle of the interview, your phone went off, and it was all of us were just like, and you were like, "Oh, there's another one."
Yeah.
Click.
Oh yeah, that's kind of a habit for us. It's like, I can show it to you if you can see. I don't know if you can see it. It's this is the screen. Oh, I don't know if you can see it, but this is the screen. It happens like 4 or 5 times per day. Sometimes it's at night. We're supposed to go to a bomb shelter, but the place where we live, there's no bomb shelter. So the best advice would be to go into the corridor, because, well, the first wall can be ruined, but the second wall typically stands, so it's better to hide there. But some of my friends actually live there. My relatives live in the corridors, in the lobby of your apartment or house. That's where they live. And the bomb shelters that we supported in some way, subways, there's lots of elderly people and people with children and people with disabilities who just went there and they stayed there for weeks without leaving.
Now, the situation is changing right now, but you guys are still, you're still dealing with what you're dealing with. I don't really think we want to talk about the other part of your job, which is the documentation of the war crimes. I know that you and a number of volunteers have been trying to collect information for potential war crime trials, tribunals down the road. But I think it's important for people in North America to remember that this is still your lives. Russia has readjusted their strategy and they've moved a little bit away from Kyiv, but you guys are still in danger. You're still living this occupation, right?
Exactly. Well, there's been a number of atrocities already fixed, and I personally talked to about a dozen people who have experienced that, and their relatives have been killed. And now when I first heard about it, I couldn't sleep at night. I actually cried, cried like a baby. I'm honest about it. But then after every other case, I was like, okay, there's another one, and then there's another one. And now I'm kind of, used to that, just like to the sirens. That is horrible to say, but this is, I used to it. Like 2 days ago, there was this bombing in Kramatorsk, as you probably heard.
Okay.
Russians hit
train station.
Yeah. They hit a missile, in 2 missiles, very heavy ones. And this is a city far from me. I don't know anyone, but through social media, I found several people who are looking for their relatives. And then I created a Facebook page because I understood that there's nobody who is doing it. So I did a Facebook page specifically for those who look for their relatives who could have been lost there. And now the page is more than 400 people. It just happened over 2 days. Yeah. So I tried to do whatever just to help those people,
Yeah. Well, and that's just one of many things that you've been doing. And we've been talking to you since the beginning of this whole thing on the podcast that I do in the afternoons. But I wanted to introduce you to the Locker Room audience just based on the fact that we've piggybacked the initiative, the T-shirt initiative here as well, to try to raise some money for you. Alex, I want you to stay safe. And we're thinking about you. Canada and the rest of the world is behind you here with what you're going through right now. And it's just awful. It's so frustrating to watch on this end. And this isn't much what we're doing, but it's at least something. And the T-shirts are available on our merch page if you go, and 100% of the proceeds are going to go to what Alex is trying to accomplish on his end in Ukraine. And we thank you for your time today, my friend.
Thank you, Lachlan. Thank you, Grant. Thank you, Jenny.
Follow Alex on Twitter. Again, it's just his last name, Dayrabekov. And good luck, my friend, okay?
Thank you. Have a good day.
The Locker Room.
Brought to you by Always Plumbing and Heating.
Weekday mornings on 95.7 Cruise FM.